So that's Romans chapter 9. We're going to be starting with verse 19. It reads, "You will say to me then, why does he still find fault? For who has resisted his will? But indeed, O man, who are you to reply against God? Will the thing that formed say to him who formed it, why have you made me like this? Does not the potter have power over the clay, from the same lump to make one vessel for honor, another for dishonor? What if God, wanting to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath prepared for destruction, and that he might make known the riches, of his glory on the vessels of mercy which he had prepared beforehand for glory, even us whom he called not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. As he says also in Hosea, I will call them my people who were not my people, and her beloved who was not beloved. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there they shall be called sons of the living God." And just to back up one verse, and I probably should have done that before. Therefore, in verse 18, he has mercy on whom he wills, and on whom he wills he hardens. There are two big thoughts in here that I think sometimes we don't give God full credit for. The part about the hardening. Did you ever think, and I believe it was Jim that brought this up in a slightly different way last week, that the hardening that was accomplished was in truth rejection of God. When we think about Pharaoh, we don't think about Pharaoh as being the nice guy that God was trying to reach. We think of him as the big nasty that God hardened his heart. But did you ever stop and think? We get to read exactly how God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh liked to think of himself as the big kahuna. He liked to think of himself as being a god. But what did God do? Through Moses, God showed himself to be the true God. Notice, Pharaoh doesn't, after Moses turns the water to blood, turn water to blood himself. No, he gets his special magi to do their mysterious things, and they're able to do it. Pharaoh never gods it up to show he's equal to the God that Moses is bringing to them. Instead, when faced with the truth, Pharaoh chooses to deny truth, and in so doing, harden his own heart. God is not going up to Pharaoh and saying, I'm going to make him nasty. I'm going to show him the truth. And because of who Pharaoh chooses to be, Pharaoh denies the truth that's right there in front of him, and in so doing, hardens his own heart by his own denial of truth. Go ahead.
You know, a lot of this going on today too.
Mm-hmm.
Think about parents that don't teach their kids properly how to be part of society and everything else, and come to the title and everything else. You know, like Pharaoh's parents, that they believed in God was separate from them. They didn't believe they were gods. And as they raised their kids and everything else, their kids became entitled because they're Pharaoh. So as entitlement goes on and everything else, the harder their hearts get, the more they think they're God. And that's basically what happens in society today. You got kids that are disrespectful and everything else, got hardened hearts and everything. You see it all over the internet.
Yep.
It's ridiculous because the fact that, you know, parents slowly gave this entitlement feeling, just like Pharaoh, think that they don't need God, that they are God, and everything else. It's just
Right.
It's like the denial, I mean, think about the Middle East just overnight,
Mm-hmm.
when they intentionally killed a bunch of kids,
Mhm.
12 kids. And there's still people that are defending that action. How, that's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Any rational human being knows that's evil.
Right. I'm trying to get out my next part of the lesson.
it's just like abortion.
I dropped one. All right. This is part of what we're talking about and part of what we're leading into. If you got an up close look at this, it looks like a marble until you're up close. And then you realize that there are some scuffs that show you that it is not any kind of glass material underneath. It's some kind of composite or a metal that has been coated over to make it look like a nice shiny marble. And on its own, it might look and think, hey, I am a cool shiny marble. I am significant. I'm pretty hefty. I'm powerful. I'm one of those ones you want to use as a shooter. Unless you know what it really is. Pharaoh was like this marble. Pharaoh knew the difference between what he was seeing occur and how he really wanted it to be. And what Pharaoh didn't understand is the reason why truth was being given to him was he did have a choice. God knew how Pharaoh was, but Pharaoh still had a choice to change and accept the truth he was being offered. And how this segues into this was the last one I found. I was out walking with Matthew. We're heading over to Taco Bell. I look down. I go, look. And he goes, what? I said, I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. And I pick it up. And I go, do you know what this is? He goes, yeah, I know what it is. It's yours now. And I said, yeah. I said, it's not a marble. And he goes, what? Yeah, take a look. It's not a marble. But you're right. It's mine now. If you take a good look at this, it's nice, round, and shiny. This is what I found before it. This is ball bearing. It's hefty. It sort of looks like a marble. It's not. It's mine now. This one. This is the one I actually paid money for. This was the one I got before those other two. And you might be wondering, Rich, what are you doing with all these marbles? Well, for starters, I'm making sure I got some marbles, that I haven't lost them all. Because the truth is, going all the way back, the last marble I had from being a little kid got stolen from me when I was a college student. It was in an itty-bitty change purse that sort of looked like Scrooge McDuck's change purse. And that's the reason why I had it, because it looked like Scrooge McDuck's change purse where he kept his #1 dime. I kept my marble in that special change purse because, like the #1 dime that Scrooge McDuck valued so much, because it was his first. In my case, I valued that marble because it was my last marble, and I was going to college with that marble. Since that got stolen out of a car, big red Cadillac, all they took was the change that was sitting out in one spot and my little change purse that was loaded with change in my last marble. Since that time, though, I've been collecting every little round thing that sort of looks like a marble. This one's not a marble, it's a bead. It's made out of plastic. This one, if you know anything about computers, is an older mouse ball. It's got a lead ball inside of it. It's still round. The rest of these are all marbles, though, and they're all different. They're not even the same size. Some of them are normal marble size. Some of them are smaller, itty bittier, but they're still marbles. These are marbles I've found, and I've got about another handful at home that are my found marbles. Somebody for Christmas one year bought me a bag of white marbles to make sure I had enough marbles. The cool thing about all these isn't anything. None of the marbles that I've got is super special looking, but they're special to me. They were lost. I found them in most cases. They became mine. And because they're mine, that made them different and special to me. Pharaoh could have been part of what we read immediately following the part about hardening. Because what did God show? He showed Pharaoh truth about God. And Pharaoh chose to deny and harden himself against that godly truth. When we get down to especially 25 and beyond, I will call them my people who were not my people, and her beloved who is not beloved. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was said of them, or to them, you are not my people, there they shall be called sons of the living God. Way back in the beginning, God made it all good. And he made two special marbles that were good like all the rest of creation. No flaws. Those two marbles decided they were going to get themselves lost. And they go cruising. And they get grungy with sin. They're no longer gods insofar as they scattered. They left God. Are they still gods? Yes. All of creation is God's. All the marbles that will come into being because of those two, by that sense, are still God's. Yet, all of them went rolling away off to whatever directions they felt like. And as we know, prior to Noah, they went rolling in some pretty nasty. So nasty that God said, no, this is just unacceptable. We can't have this. We're clearing it out. But when it all starts up again after Noah, it's still in the same kind of boat it was from Genesis. The marbles had the opportunity, and for the most part, they'd scatter. But then along comes an Abraham. And the Abraham says, hey, God, I want to hang out. I want to be yours. I'm going to do what I can to be yours. And we know from there's the blessing that goes forward of seed. But when we look at all the others that come afterwards, it's never a matter of God going out and grabbing that one I'm going to add, I'm going to take that one, and I'm going to take that one. It were the ones that came to God that God would identify as his. When the children of Israel first really became God's chosen people, they were crying out to God, Lord, help us. This Egyptian rule, it's just brutal. We can't last under this. And they sought God. They didn't stick with him, they scatter again. But then we have others who will again seek and stick with God. It's not that any of those marbles in and of themselves were super powerful, special, awesome. They were the ones that put themselves in the place to be gods. And when I think about the marbles I've got, They were the ones that put themselves in the right place to be found by me, and I gladly made them my own. What Jesus was saying, or what God was saying through Hosea, and then through Isaiah, and says through his own son, and other places in the Old Testament too, all those that are out there, I'm going to be calling them in. I'm going to be claiming them as mine. Because if we think about it from way back in the beginning, they all are his. But he's not going to force that on any of them. But he will gladly claim and declare as his own those that are sitting where they belong and are willing to stay there, and all the rest that are willing to come and, instead of remaining lost, be his. We and the Jews that Paul was writing to here need to realize the thing that makes all the difference is God saying, yes, they're mine. We couldn't force that, but God empowers that of us. And even once that's empowered and taken place, this one's still not a marble, but that's okay. Because I chose to accept it, keep it, and call it mine. It's not going to ever become the perfect, but that's okay. Because I chose to accept it and make it mine. There are going to be things about who we are we're not going to necessarily get straightened out. But when we're facing the situation we first touched on, the Pharaoh situation, when we do encounter the buffing machine, and there's the opportunity to get straightened out a rough spot that's our own mistake, if we are willing to submit to the buffing, to the correction, to the truth. Because remember what we said, I believe it is on Wednesday night. How are they sanctified? By the word. What is the word? The word is the truth. And when we work in the truth, it sets us free. When we fight against it, harden our hearts against the truth, we're separating ourselves from God. So in that respect, what we're reading about here in Romans is right up there again with John. How are they sanctified? By the truth. Who are the ones who are sanctified? Not just the ones that I initially claimed and said, yeah, I will take all of you. It's the ones that are, one, willing to stay with, two, to come and become a part of. Those are the ones who he then is going to call sons of the living God. Does that all make sense? Too often we get caught up in this idea that, oh, well, so-and-so is special because they do X, Y, and Z. No. I could call this one special because it's heavy and big. It's also the most scuffed up one I've got. I used to have, and I probably do have it at home, one that's got a big spot chipped out of it. That's okay. It's mine. And because it's part of mine, that makes it important to me. And we need to realize what makes us important to God isn't how perfect, how marble, how whatever. It's we put ourselves in the right place to become his. We need to be striving to stay in that place where we are his. Because what's the nature of a marble? To roll. And unfortunately, if we're not working against it, the world's slanted. And it's going to have us rolling away from God. We got to do our part to make sure we're staying as his. The people that Paul's writing about wasn't just those people there in Rome. Because thinking back to Jesus, when he healed people, people came from hundreds, sometimes 1,000 miles away, when they heard there was an opportunity for difference in their lives. They understood it at a physical. They didn't get the spiritual yet, but eventually, Pentecost. They came because of God. They stayed because of Christ. And they became.
The issue has to do with God made us in his image. We want to make God in our image and have him adjust to our preferences as opposed to just submission.
Yep. Submission. Staying in the pocket they were put in. Because being in that pocket means valued. Valued. Who applies the value to how much this is worth? I do. Who applies the value as to how much each of us is worth? God. When we recognize that and submit to that, and realize we are the ones who need to strive to stay with him, we got a different picture than, hey, I'm one of his faithful. I came. I just put myself up because I claim my level of faithfulness based on my attendance. Here is my market value. No. That's not where it's at. It's where God has placed the value. And we back that valuing by striving to remain his. What follows then from Isaiah in verse 27? Isaiah also cries out concerning Israel. Though the number of children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, the remnant will be saved. For he will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness, because the Lord will make a short work upon the earth. And as Isaiah said before, unless the Lord of Sabaoth had left us a seed, we would have become like Sodom, and we would have been made like Gomorrah. The big white bag I've got of marbles. They're not going to necessarily stay together unless I keep them in the bag. Israel. God wasn't bagging them in. He let them choose. And we know from the Old Testament, what did the majority choose? Not to yield, not to submit, not to strive to become more his. They went their own way. And a marble rolling off its own way, good luck finding them. Because this one and the ball bearing are the only two I found in the past year. The last one that I bought was when we were up in Pennsylvania a year and a quarter ago. No, February? Year and a half about. So, and the reason I bought it is because we found at a farmer's market somebody selling knickknacks, and they were selling marbles. It was again a found marble situation for me. So I figured, hey, I found some, I'm going to buy one. Go ahead.
Well, when they get away from each other too, and they're solo,
Yeah. All on their own?
But that's how Baal got into the picture and everything else. It's just.
You read my notes for this morning's sermon?
They go to these temptations and everything else, and they find themselves part of these other religions and everything else. They bring it back to Israel.
Right.
That's the worst part of all.
Yeah.
I mean, when you was lost, stay lost, and you might carry it back to your family.
Right.
But that's,
Yep. And the next verse continues with our thought. What shall we say then? That Gentiles who did not pursue righteousness have attained to righteousness, even the righteousness of faith? And what he's saying there is, are we saying that these people who aren't God's by design have somehow miraculously attained it without pursuing it? And the answer is no, that's crazy talk. They pursued God, as we've already discussed, like Rahab, like Ruth. And even though they were not God's people by initial choice, they pursued and became. Paul's being sarcastic. No, the Gentiles didn't just waboom, grace into it, free, no charge, no hassles. Everybody's welcome, just come charging in. No, they were ones who pursued God and his righteousness and became. And then 31, but Israel pursued the law of righteousness, has not attained to the law of righteousness. And again, did Israel really pursue the law as God's? No. He's continuing in this sarcasm. Those who knew better, who should have stayed where they were with God, said, hey, I'm the kind of marble God loves. And I love going that direction, and that's where I'm going to go, because that makes me happy right now. And I'll still be the kind of marble God loves, because I'm just special. They had the law. They knew where they belonged. And in spite of that, they go rolling. They are doing the exact opposite of the sarcasm he has with the Gentiles, of they're all out there rolling. They're not even looking to find God. Oh, yes, they were, and those are the ones he calls sons of God. And the ones who were called by that name, who did not seek and pursue God, are the ones he's let go of. And just so we finish it off real quick on this chapter itself, boom, 32. Why? Because they did not seek it by faith, but as it were, by the works of the law, for they stumbled at that stumbling stone, as it is written, behold, I lay in Zion a stumbling stone and a rock of offense, and whoever believes on me shall not be put to shame. And what is that rock? Christ. What is that rock? The Word. What is that rock? That which purifies and sanctifies is a stumbling block to those who are on the inside who don't really want God. And they go tripping on out. It's a stumbling block to those who are in the world. Because, hey, I don't want to have to go through that. I want to do it my way. I like being Pharaoh, being God. In spite of the fact you just showed me I'm not. I'm going to ignore that rock, and I'm going to go about doing it my way. And stay lost. So, closing it out with this. Paul's letting them know, we're all here together. all here together is not phenomenal because this is the group. It's phenomenal because one, and this last part, the ones who have pursued and sought God, those are the ones that God's reaching out and saying, yes, that one's mine. I will so gladly claim it. Oh, and that other, yes, that one, it's seeking after me, it's mine. The pretty one that went rolling all the way over there on its own and is deserting, I give him that choice to do so. He's encouraging the group that's there. You've sought God, and that's good. Because if you were the chosen, the Israelites, not all of you stayed seeking God, and you know it. To those in the world, you may not know it yet, but you're going to know. In the beginning, God, and actually the truth is actually at that time, they all believed that. You didn't have any argument about creation versus evolution versus whatever. Greeks, Jews, pick your crowd. Everybody knew, in the beginning, God. So if in the beginning, you were God's, just because everybody's gone scattering, doesn't deny the state that you were in the beginning. What denies that is the choice God allows you. But the truth of what he's saying here is, where do you really want to be? You want to be his.